Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be just. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. I'm no qua, Osinachi. One lemon, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi. Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be just. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. I'm no qua, Osinachi. One lemon, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi.
ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. I'm no kwa, Osinachi. One man, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi. Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. I'm no kwa, Osinachi. One man, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Am I on?
You are?
Yes, I can hear you. Hello.
Okay, welcome everybody. Apology for the network issue. I'm having some challenges with setting up my network here in Lagos. So thank you. So this is the panel on ethnicity and nation building. And we'll be starting in about 3 minutes now. So once we get everybody, I would probably want to request everybody before we start to probably do a test on their PowerPoint projector. So if you can just run a test on your slide so that we can be sure that everything is fine, that we won't have any disruption. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Could you flip through the slides so that we're sure that, okay, great. All right. Okay, could you remove the slide and let's get someone else to experiment? Okay. Okay, this is fine. All right. All right.
Okay, shall I try?
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we are starting right away. Okay.
Okay.
We are starting right away now, and
okay. What's happening?
hello.
Can you
hear me, everybody?
All right.
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes,
Okay.
we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, my network is quite fluctuating, but it will be resolved shortly. We'll be starting in about 60 seconds. I'm just trying to analyze with my internet connection. Thank you.
Just try 1 second.
Okay, so our panel is ethnicity and nation building. And in this panel, we have 4 major presenters. We have Dr. John Udo from the Federal University of Kashere, and Bukola, an independent scholar. He'll be presenting a theme titled Hausa and Igbo Relations in Post-Civil War Zaire. So secondly, we have another presenter, Dr. Ridwan Kolawole from Fountain University and University of Ibadan, presenting with Dr. Babatunde Ojubi from the University of Ibadan. Dr. Rilwan is a faculty in the Department of Mass Communication at Osogbo University. We also have other presenters like Dr. Bolanle Adetula and Ovuata Onojuero from the University of Ibadan. And we also have Dr. Nisha, who we have apology, Nisha Rayot, who is from the Yale University, and she's going to be presenting the Subaltern Transnational Cycles Acrobatic and Indian Ocean World. So thank you, everybody. Without wasting much time, I think we'll probably want to switch into the first presentation so that we could have ample time for discussion and Q&A. So I will after which we have a Q&A. Each presenter will have 15 minutes for their presentation, and we'll take the question and answer. So Dr. John Ude, representing Hausa and Igbo relations in post-Civil War Zaria, 1970 to 2000. So Dr. Udo, you have the floor. Thank you. And I will probably implore everybody, the participant can type in their questions in the Q&A section or indicate at the end of the session so that we can take all the questions in a row. Thank you. Dr. Udo.
Okay, may I start?
Yeah, you can start, please.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Udo John. I am a student of Nigerian Defense Academy, Kaduna. Please, I'm sorry I could not share my slide because my laptop has a problem, so I'm using my phone to present. So the topic for my presentation, the slide change. Yes, actually the topic is my PhD proposal. So present to the House so that I could get inputs and suggestions on how to improve the proposal. So the topic is Igbo Hausa intergroup relations in Zaria after the Nigerian Civil War, 1970 to 2000 AD. And the proposal is structured into 6 subheadings. I have the background to the study, statement of the research problem, aim and objectives, research significance, research design / method, review of literature, then lastly we have chapterization. Starting with the background to the study, the Igbo and Hausa are among the major ethnic groups in Nigeria. They have shared a long history of mutual coexistence. In the pre-colonial period, trade was one of the major factors that brought the Igbo and the Hausas into close contact. And also, during the era of British colonialism, in the later part of the 19th century and early part of the 20th century, there was the establishment of colonial institutions and also the establishment of railway lines linking the south to the north. So this facilitated the movement of the Igbo people from the eastern part of Nigeria to the north, of which Zaria was one of the places that they settled. So this increased the rate of contact between the north and also the south. Now, there was some peaceful mutual coexistence between these groups, not until in areas which we call Sabongeri became a subject of attack by their hosts. So this affected their relationship. But still, the movement of Igbo people to the northern part of Nigeria, of which Zaria was inclusive, continued. And at independence in 1960, we had the establishment of educational institutions. Like, for example, in Zaria, we had the establishment of Ahmadu Bello University. So this also increased the rate of migration of Igbo people to settle in these in the northern part of Nigeria, of which Zaria is my case study. And also the First Republic actually witnessed turmoils. It witnessed some upheavals, which led to the collapse of that First Republic. And the aftermath of the First Republic saw various, saw the what we call the pogroms or the Nigerian crisis, of which Igbo people were the major targets. And because their lives were not secure in the north, especially in Zaria, which is my area of study, there was an exodus that is the movement of Igbo people back to the eastern part of Nigeria. And this also continued up to the outbreak of the Nigerian Civil War in 60. Nigerian Civil War of 1970. Then General initiated some policies, and these policies were meant at reintegrating the country. And for example, we had his 3 R's, which were anchored on integration, the idea was basically anchored. Sorry, please, can you hear me? Don't know. Okay. Now this policy.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, can I go ahead? I'm getting some sounds.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes. So now these policies were actually anchored on making the Igbo to come back to the northern part of Nigeria and also to foster reintegration. Now, the basic focus of this proposal is to look at how people return back to the north, especially Zaria, and how they were able to reintegrate into the larger Zaria society up to 2000 AD. Now, looking at the statement of the problem, actually there are several works on intergroup relations among the different groups in Nigeria, but much attention has not been paid or channeled to discussing the dynamics of intergroup relations between the Igbo and Hausa in Zaria after the Nigerian Civil War. The aim and objectives. The basic aim of this research is to examine the relationship between the Igbo and Hausa in Zaria after the Nigerian Civil War up to 2000 AD. And the objectives of the study are anchored on the following. First, to examine the factors that attracted the Igbo migrant to settle in Zaria. And secondly, to look at the nature of relationship between the Igbo and Hausa before the Nigerian Civil War. And thirdly, to analyze the factors that affected the relationship between the two groups during the Civil War. And also to interrogate the factors that motivated the return of the Igbo people to Zaria after the Civil War. And lastly, to examine how the Igbo people fared in Zaria after the Nigerian Civil War. Then next, the Zaria as a case study is very important because it was one of the ancient cities in northern Nigeria. And it was strategic because it was located on the trans-Saharan trade routes. And also during the colonial period too, many colonial institutions were sited in Zaria. So this was a point of attraction for migrants from all walks of life to settle in Zaria. Now, despite the significance of the area that we are studying, the The area basically is understudied, of which in terms of looking at the Igbo-Hausa intergroup relations after the Civil War. And also the study will be relevant to policymakers and researchers who want to work on promoting peace through effective intergroup relations. And also the period 1970 to 2000 AD is also very significant. 1970 marked the end of Nigerian Civil War, and which saw the influx, the return of the Igbo people to the north, and Zaria was inclusive. And then the year 2000 was a period in which there was also crisis in the northern part of Nigeria, especially talking about the Sharia crisis, which people back to the east. Such designs and method, basically the study will be conducted using qualitative, and relevant information will be generated via
My name is Rashid.
to desk work. And also I need to visit the archives at Kaduna, Enugu, and to collect primary data. And interviews will also be conducted with targeted respondents, such as community leaders, traders, educationists, religious leaders, and eyewitnesses in strengthening the discourse. And also, I will be relying on secondary data too, looking at research papers done around intergroup relations in the area. And also, I have lived all my life in Zaria, so I'm familiar with the terrain. So this will give me advantage in identifying those to interview. And then review of related literature. A number of literature have been reviewed to look at where I will be contributing to knowledge. Then lastly, let me just quickly go to the chapterization. I have 7 chapters for the work. The first 2 chapters are anchored on the background to the study. And the second chapter is basically literature review. Then chapter 3 will look at Igbo community in Zaria up to 1970. Then chapter 4 will look at the return of Igbo people to Zaria after the Nigerian Civil War. Then chapter 5 will look at the involvement of Igbo people in the socio-economic and political affairs of Zaria. And then chapter 6 will talk about the Igbo community and social unrest and conflict in Zaria. Then lastly, chapter 5 will be my general conclusion and bibliography. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to contributions. Sorry, I can't hear you. It seems you are muted. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you for the brilliant presentation. I think we're having some technological issues, but I think we'll just have to cope with it for this session. So we'll take another presentation before coming to the Q&A session, where we'll be able to interrogate the paper presented by Dr. John Umo. So the next presenter on the list is Dr. Ridwan Kolawole and Babatunde Ujubiyu are presenting their theme of their paper, Frames of Negative Identity, Nigerian Media Reportage of the Farmer-Elder Conflict in North Central Nigeria. You have the floor, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Ridwan Kolawole. I'm a lecturer in the Department of Mass Communication, Fountain University in Osogbo. And my co-author and presenter is Dr. Papatunde Ojebu from the Department of Communication and Language at University of Ibadan. So our paper, as the chairman has said, we are examining the frames of negative identity in the Nigerian media reportage of farmer-elder conflict, particularly in the north-central Nigeria. Farmer-elder conflict is one of the major problems facing Nigeria at the moment. The problem did not just start. It has been in existence for many years. But because of the commonality, the camaraderie that existed among different cultures in Nigeria then, they were able to correct or address the challenges they have. Then, as communities, as villages grew to become towns, and those who are rearing animals and the farmers have limited resources to feed the animals and limited land to also farm, respectively, the problem continued to expand and to the extent of uncontrollable manner. Since Nigeria returned to democracy in 1999, the farmer-elder conflict has become a serious problem, especially that the media have got involved in reporting this conflict, perhaps taking sides with one party against the other. But in Nigeria, again, North Central has become the hotbed of this conflict in the recent past, particularly that there have been reports of more casualties sustained in Benue and Plateau states, according to Transparency International and other scholarly work. Now, the media, as constructors of social reality, have been blamed in different ways and different circumstances because of their involvement in reporting a conflict, using the instruments of framing in the discourse. Media role in conflict discourse, us versus them narrative, has been reported to be a precursor to conflict escalation. Expectedly, the media are to bring conflict, controversy, problem to the level of resolution and bringing parties in conflict together to resolve crisis, rather than reporting it in a way that will lead to aggravation. Different factors have been assumed to be responsible. One of these factors is political interest, profits, and ownership interest. Then proximity of the conflict site to the media have also been established as factors that affect the direction towards the media to report conflict. The causes of farmer-elder conflict in Nigeria, like I said earlier, has been viewed from different perspectives, but major perspective to this is competition, which emanated as a result of the sharing of the same land resources by the farmers and the pastoralists. Resource control is not peculiar to Nigeria, as we have had in different countries in Europe, in other parts of Africa, in America, and even in Asia, that resource control has been a major factor of conflict. But the way media portray the conflict also matters a lot in either escalating the conflict or de-escalating it. Now, this is one of the assessments that we made in the media reportage of farmer-elder conflict. So this is a baseline study that we did.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, okay,
are you done with the presentation? Are you done with your presentation?
No, it's a technical problem, please.
Okay, please, can you continue? Okay.
It's a technical problem. You connect now.
Okay, we'll just give you some seconds to do that. Okay, while we wait for Dr. Babatunde, maybe we should just take the next presentation while we go back to Dr. Babatunde. I think that's quite okay. So we should take the presentation by Dr. Bolanle Adetula and Uvuata Onajiri. No, the politics of value and entitlement ethics in Nigeria, the philosophical inquiry. I think we can probably take this while Dr. Babatunde is sorting out his technological vision on the future. Thank you. So you have the floor, Dr. Bolanle Adetula and Uvuata.
Okay, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Can anyone hear me?
Good afternoon, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, let me quickly share my screen. Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, Dr. Babatunde, okay, Dr. Riwan Kolawole is back.
Yes,
okay.
I'm very sorry for the break in transmission.
Okay, just continue. Please, Dr. Uvuata, and please, Adetula, please, could you take audio
I'm very sorry. If you could share my screen. So I was talking about the baseline that you conducted in the beginning of this study, and what we found out that Benue and Benue Plateau and other states like that, they are the most affected in this conflict. So it's validated what has been in existence in the literature. So according to the newspaper that we selected, so Benue is #1, Plateau followed, Abuja followed, Delta, Ondo, and Taraba states. So these were the sites, but our attention is particularly on Benue and Plateau states, which are states in the north central Nigeria, particularly that they have the highest record of this conflict. So the problem, so we have found in the literature that Trump conflict has attracted attention of scholars from different fields, but because of our own peculiarity, we are media scholars and we're looking at how media portray this conflict. We find that even though we have had people who have examined this from ethno-religious dimension, they have looked at security challenges it poses, particularly those who have conducted that study from sociology, from business and conflict studies, from history, from political science, among others. So we discovered that the media perspective of this conflict has been largely about the quantitative attribute of this reportage, that of, oh, this is the percentage, 90% negative, 50%, 10% positive. So we went ahead to look at the qualitative way. What are the words used instead of just counting the number? What are the exact words used by this media to describe the conflict actors as well as the conflict? So now we set to respond to these two objectives, to examine the specific identity constructs used by the media to characterize the conflict actors. And secondly, to investigate the media role in escalation or the escalation, the farmer pastoralist, we're talking about the herdsmen, farmer pastoralist violent conflict in the north-central Nigeria. This work is driven by framing theory, and not just framing in its totality. We are looking at the constructionist approach to framing, which was popularized by Entman in his famous work, who says that framing in a constructionist manner is to promote a particular problem definition and provide recommendation based on the media perspective to the problem so described. Then we are also looking at the identity construction framework to look at what identity is portrayed by the media when they are framing the conflict actors and the conflict itself. This is our method. We look at the two national dailies based on their historical antecedents: Vanguard, which is post-independence Nigerian newspaper, and the Nigerian Tribune, which is a pre-independence Nigerian newspaper. So we look at how the two of them, and the one that was in existence before the Civil War, and how and still alive even after the Civil War, and the one that emerged after the Civil War. So this study adopts digital ethnography for content analysis. We examine the content of these newspapers from the archives of these two dailies that we selected to do the analysis. And we use descriptive and thematic analysis to present our data findings. From the 68 appearances in the selected extractions, herdsmen were more referred to as invaders, killer herdsmen, arms carrier, criminal herders, destructive herdsmen, murderous herdsmen, notorious Fulani herders, and herdsmen influencing food insecurity. So this is what we found out qualitatively. Look at what the constructs used by the selected newspapers. Now, for instance, in one of the editions of Nigerian Tribune, February 16, 2021, it said, protecting their people from the murderous Fulani herders who thrive on bloodlust. So this is the qualitative aspect, the extract from the newspapers of this edition. Then the reportage of the selected newspapers contains blameworthy and monstrous descriptions of the herdsmen in particular. Now, this is the newspaper's frame of negativity, which informed the focus of this paper. So we can see. So we see they are referred to as terrorists, murderers, hoodlums, criminal elements, cattle rearers, which is though positive. They are also referred to as killers, herders, stalkers, gunmen, rapists, among others. Now, these are the dominant identity constructs deployed by the newspapers according to what we found out in our analysis. Objective 2. Media role in the escalation of farmer conflict in North Central Nigeria. We have the issue of ethnicity being prominent, then mediatization of the conflict, in which media were also blamed for promoting conflict in the way they have reported the matter. So these are the instances that we extracted from the newspapers. So to save time. So in conclusion, the calamitous impact of farmer conflict on lives and property is not negotiable. It is established. It is no doubt that the media attention has, however, not created a pathway to a lasting solution. They have resorted to using words which will not in a way promote peace and resolve the problem. So the media are empowered to correct the wrongs in society and not aggravate the problem. So peace reporting or solution journalism will be a response to this kind of journalism. News is expected to be objective. Report it as it is, rather than calling people names, which will not help in any way. Thank you very much.
Iluan Kolawole for the very, very brief and very, very concise presentation. We'll come back to the, but we'll probably encourage the participants to please type their question in the Q&A section so that I would be able to look at all the questions holistically and interrogate them. So we'll also take the next presentation, in the same round. Now we'll be having the politics of value and entitlement ethics in Nigeria, a philosophical inquiry by Dr. Bolanle Adetula and Ovuata Onojiro. Thank you. 15 minutes.
All right. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Success Onojiro.
Hello, Dr. Onojiro. Are you having issues with your setup? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Okay, it seems we'll come back to the third presenter. Let's just move to the fourth presentation by Professor Nisha. Professor Nisha will probably come up with a presentation while we wait for. Okay, thank you. Are you ready?
Yes. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk at the Lagos Studies Conference. It's been a long-standing wish to come to Nigeria and be part of this conference. But since the world has turned this way, we are all more or less virtual. So I am a historian based in Kerala, the south of India, working with the Yale University at the moment as a Fulbright Fellow. This talk that I'm going to give today, it's actually based on my book, which came out in 2020 as with Oxford University Press. My work basically, the book work that I did basically is on the social history of Indian circus. So it is this work that more or less connected me to the Indian Ocean world, connecting East Africa and India. So this talk will explore two significant happenings in India and Africa in two different periods, split by nearly 100 years. Malabar region in the southwest coast of the Indian subcontinent witnessed the emergence of circus collieries, circus training institutes in the early 20th century, from where women, men, and youngsters from different communities got trained and went on to become renowned circus artists in various circus companies around the world. This new modern physical culture and the radical recasting of the body in a place where caste system imposed cruel restrictions of access to other bodies in terms of not just touch, but even visibility and hearing, was definitely one of the most significant historical moments in the subcontinent. In the second part of the presentation, I will look at the emergence of circus schools across East African countries such as Tanzania, Kenya, and Ethiopia by the end of the 20th century, and the journeys of African circus acrobats produced by these schools. In my larger project, I actually examined the various trajectories of inequality, labor, livelihood, and dignity that have set in motion these transnational voyages of itinerant physical cultures and bodies to think through the global web of the non-governmental capital, the colonial and post-colonial states, and policy protection in the global South. The key questions would be the globalized and homogenized forms of ethnicity, exhibition, and race that shaped this itinerant form called the circus. The recent works of Gyanendra Pandey, one of the founders of the subaltern studies, has been examining the race and caste intricacies, connecting the Dalit history with that of African Americans. He has compellingly proposed that all racism is upper caste racism. I hope to explore the caste race complexities in this itinerant industry, which remains totally unexplored in the connected context of India and Africa. These micro-histories, I hope, would contribute in understanding this performance world from the perspective of the global South and bring forth places and people across continents where bodies, selves, and locations are reimagined and reconfigured, and thus redefining the idea of transnational itself. One of the main intellectual objectives of this work is to historicize and interrogate some of these concepts and categories which are of significant importance to policy and lawmakers, activists, and social scientists. Colonialism, war, democracy, civil society, state, law, and labor, cutting across human and non-human boundaries, and distant continents have defined the complex terrain of this entertainment industry. In India, although popular culture, body, performance, and marginal communities are being widely studied in the university departments, circus remain an unexplored area, not just in India. In fact, the South Asia itself remains unexplored. When I started my doctoral research, the major challenge I faced was not only the absence of conventional archival sources, but also non-statist sources such as autobiographies, diaries, memoirs, or personal histories. While many works are available on the histories of the circuses in Europe, Australia, and America. The few works in my language, Malayalam, including some memoirs and books intended for general readership from within the circus community, do not take into account this transnational movement that I'm trying to capture and grasp. Likewise, the abundant social science literature on migration is silent about this itinerant industry. Since my doctoral research had been one of the attempts to map the past of this itinerant entertainment industry that is deeply embedded with the arrival of the modern, the histories of colonial and post-colonial state policies and civil society attitude towards animals over the centuries, the indigenous technologies and labor struggles and workers' union formations. Exploring a transnational history of Indian circus from across the boundaries was beyond the scope of that work. Kileri Kunjikanan teacher was in fact born in 1855 in Thalassery in the Kerala state in India, and learned Kalaripayattu, wrestling, gymnastics, and weightlifting. He was also into games such as cricket, which had been popular in that colonial town. The circus community in Kerala in South India respects him as the guru or father of circus acrobatics in the subcontinent. Many of the artists trained by him went on to perform and teach the circus acrobatics to subsequent generations, establishing a lineage of teachers, students, owners, and performers. Whatever knowledge Kileri had gained in the field of circus acrobatics had the flavors of many cultures and styles. He must have found in this modern, assorted physical culture the possibility to imagine an egalitarian world of the bodies of different castes and genders. Malabar of the 19th and 20th centuries was notorious for its caste discrimination. Stringent spatial and physical distance, even to the extent of seeing, was practiced by caste Hindus. This was a time when untouchability was in practice. In fact, Udaya Kumar notes about this system prevalent in the provinces, including Malabar. Let me quote him. The movement of the body in public spaces was regulated through a system of distance pollution. The sacredness of the space and the purity of the body being dependent on restrictions of access to other bodies in terms of visibility, touch, hearing, and clearly specified distances. Unquote. So, Peri Kunyikannan teacher, who converted the Payat Kalari into a circus institute, had certain things in his mind. This Payat Kalari, which he transformed into a circus Kalari, actually was traditional Payat Kalari, where caste and its dominant ways dominate the traditional system, where several Kalaris like Nayak had their own Kalari, different castes had different Kalaris. And they obviously, being of upper caste and lower caste Kalaris, could not participate in each other, or they would go into a lower caste Kalari, or a lower caste could never imagine of going to upper caste Kalaris. So when Kiri converted this traditional Kalari into a circus institute, he not only changed the idea of translating the Payat acrobatics into circus, but also reformed it in many ways, not just metaphorically, but also physically. But this does not figure in any colonial nationalist or subaltern historical narrative of resistance or reform in Malabar is not surprising at all. The daring choices Kileri Kunyikannan made in his private life stand testimony to his constant seeking out for a better and equal world. There were many acrobats like Kannan Bombayo, who actually traveled from Malabar to work in the circuses in Britain, and Ringling Brothers, for instance, in America, where he became a renowned circus star, but of course had to face new challenges like race, for instance. There is a grapevine that goes amongst the Malabar acrobats about Kannan Bombayo. It's regarding his performance in front of Hitler. which actually reminds one of the performance of Jesse Owens in the Berlin Olympics. Kanan Bompayo actually performed on the item called the rope dance, in which he was very popular, where he would do a double back somersault on a simple slack rope. And Hitler saw this and exclaimed, "The jumping devil of India," with his mouth agape. This was definitely a remarkable moment, which definitely reminds one of Jesse Owens and the two dark bodies demolishing the myth of Aryan supremacy. This is a moment that oscillated from the history of the capital H, big history of wars and Nazism and Hitler. This is a moment that Kanan Bompayo or Jesse Owens' life took to all the non-white communities, for instance. So the second part of my talk, I was hoping to explore the movements, flows, and circulations that Isabel Hoffman notes as the defining characteristics of transnational histories of circus performers from East Africa to the Indian subcontinent over the past few decades. Non-governmental organizations, mostly from the West, operative in post-colonial African nations, had been promoting the concept of social circus that facilitated the booming of circus schools in Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Kenya. And what could have inspired several youngsters to take up this vocation? The related circumstances which made possible this transnational voyages of East African performers to India seems to be two fateful turns in the Indian circus industry. One is the 1991 environment.
Tapasha, you have about 3 minutes more.
Sorry, I'll have to wind up.
You have about 3, yeah, you got to wind up. Yeah.
Okay, so let me just wind up. So there are two turns in the Indian circus industry, which is the ban on animals, and another is the ban on children, which happened in 1991 and 2011. Another significant happening that happened was the abolition of monarchy in Nepal, from where most of the Nepali artists were coming to Indian circuses. So actually it is this lacuna of several acrobats, Nepali acrobats, children, and the absence of animals that actually posed a demand in front of the Indian circus owners to have new acrobats coming over to perform several items. There are many people have been performing already in India, people from Uzbekistan, America, Europe, Russia, where several acrobats were already performing in India, and probably this initiated this movement. Thank you so much for listening to me. And it's a great pleasure to join this conference. And thank you all for having me here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Such a very excellent presentation. Okay, we'll just take the third presentation before we start the Q&A. Dr. Bolanle Adetula and Vuata Onojiro, The Politics of Value and Entitlement Ethics in Nigeria, a philosophical inquiry. I believe the internet is quite stable now.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I've been having very serious network glitches, so I wouldn't even be able to turn on my video. The last time I went off, I was trying to share my slides, and it went off immediately. I tried it the second time. So if you don't mind, I will crave your indulgence to just make my presentation, unfortunately, without sharing the slide. I could have sent it to you through email. Okay, can I go ahead?
Fine. Yeah, fine, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. So I and Bolanle Adetula have worked on the politics of value and entitlement ethics in Nigeria, a philosophical inquiry. The crux of our paper has been to address the question of financial value and the resource control debate in the Nigerian political and sociocultural system. Secondly, to demonstrate what we term an ethic of entitlement and how it interrogates with the discourse of resource ownership in Nigeria. Thirdly, we intend to interrogate the role of political power in the resource governance debate. So as a beginning point for this presentation, I would like to pinpoint the notion of value politics and Nigeria. So when we talk about the question of value, by value, we intend to talk about not just something that an individual holds dear, that could be the general usage of the word value, but then we conceptualize this in being a twin term, first of all, having to do with valueless money and somehow moneyless value or moneyless value. So we intend to push what we call an ethical value as opposed to a financial value. So on this note, we see the ethical value as referring to the values which are held in society as guiding the moral conduct. On the other hand, we see financial value as values which guide the pursuance of financial resources, as well as those financial resources in themselves. So we understand that when we talk about the value of money, we're talking about the value with which a commodity can be exchanged or the exchange rate of that particular commodity. So when we bring this into the question of value politics, we are pushing forward an argument that value politics interrogates both the ethical value and the value of resources, which is the financial base of a country. Second thought, this brings to bear three distinct questions. Now, the first question is the question of the relation of ethical values to financial value. We raise this question in asking, how does ethical value relate to financial value in the resource control debate? Secondly, it's the question of the morality of resource generation or resource exploitation. That is to say, is it moral in a way to take out resources from a particular region and spread out its use for everything or for all regions? That is to say, do we see any moral negativity or positivity in the case that Mr. A provides or resources are extracted from the grounds of Mr. A, and those same resources are evenly distributed between A, B, C, and D, or Mr. A is just giving a little apportionment or a little more percentage because that he is the generator of the resources. So that is what we talk about, the morality of resource distribution. Now, thirdly is the question of responsibility, which becomes even a more pertinent question in saying that, is there any moral responsibility in depleting the environment? So the environment is depleted as a result of exploitation of resources. And yes, we know about the greenhouse gases, we know about the global warming scenario. So we raise the question to say, is there any ethical imperative binding or hampering or reducing or regulating the exploitation of resources and its subsequent hazard? Now, this brings us to our first point of the argument to say that Nigeria, although blessed with a large chunk of resources, dwells or builds its entire financial management and financial derivation, I think that would be proper language. We derive the entirety of our financial power from the exploitation of crude oil. Now, according to the NNPC, that's the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, Nigerian crude oil as at 2021, Nigeria's crude oil production lies at a maximum of 2.5 million barrels per day, which makes her the highest or the largest producer of oil in Africa and the 6th largest oil producing country in the world. Now, Nigeria further accounts for 3.1% of OPEC's share of world crude oil reserve. But the very problem of this exploitation is the fact that this entire glamorous percentage of Nigerian crude oil exploitation comes just from a section of our economy, which is a section of our geographical region, which is the Niger Delta region, which to us becomes very important in raising fundamental questions to say, how exactly then does the exploitation of the question of responsibility, we raise that question of responsibility to say, who is responsible for the impact, the environmental impact of these exploited resources? Who is responsible for that environmental impact, number one? And secondly, what about the compensation? Who is to be held responsible for receiving or giving such compensation? That's the first question of responsibility. Now, the second question we ask again is the question of morality, to say that can the continuous exploitation of natural resources in the face of obvious environmental hazard and damage to the economies of those communities be ethical? And we ask the ethical imperative that, oh yeah, there's an ethical imperative for destroying wildlife and destroying the environment as in a bid to exploit resources to feed an entire nation. This has raised the question of resource control struggle in the Niger Delta. Resource control is a wide struggle that's on the existence of financial autonomy to the different levels of government in line with the power sharing formula of the federal system. So the argument of the resource control advocates is the fact that Nigeria operates a federal system, number one. Number two, the exploitation of natural resources from the Niger Delta affects the environmental condition of this region. So on such premise, the exploited region should rather be in control of these resources, in the sense that they understand how it is exploited, or rather they understand the impact of the economy, the impact of the exploitation on their local economy. Now, this is the first question, or the first interrogation with the resource control struggle. So the resource control in itself is based on three basic strands, which we have called the absolute resource control stance. The arguments there have to push that, every producing region should control 100% of their resources. The second is the principal resource control, which says, okay, there should be a derivation. And thirdly, there's the increased derivation. But now, my basic question is, how does this relate to the question of value politics in Nigeria? And here's where it is. This is where we bring the notion of an ethic of entitlement. We have pointed out that, that the value politics, our interrogation of value politics, sees the intersect between ethical views and financial values. And throughout this presentation, we have tried to pinpoint each layer of ethical value. But let's talk a little bit about the financial value, which we call the ethic of entitlement. Now, by the notion of an ethic of entitlement, we simply refer to how the different angles of the resource control debate attempt to use their hold on power, either political or economic, in order to push their arguments. So each angle, the Niger Delta angle and the federal angle, tends to push the arguments on the governance or control of resources due or based on certain levels of political power which they hold. So we're pushing the argument that political power is at the centerpiece of the resource control governance and also at the centerpiece of the exploitation of resources. So on the one hand, the entirety of value politics is based on the question of political power. That is to say, whosoever holds the political power will determine the values that will be pushed at the central and the state level. Now, whosoever holds power, as I've said, will determine the push in this interrogation. In the same vein, we intended to draw our encapsulation into 2 points, the first of which we call the population-based value or ethic of entitlement as opposed to the resource-based value or ethic of entitlement. So those on the population majority, that is those who have a large majority of population, would claim that holding the population majority of a country gives them the right to determine what should or how the resource of the country should be run. So we can see that in the electionary system, whereby those who have a larger share, of the electoral power would have the ability to elect representatives to make policies in their favor. So that informs one of the reasons why those on the resource control debate argues that the Nigeria revenue allocation formula is problematic. Now, on the second hand, what we have called the resource governance or the resource based value of entitlement, these individuals hold to the argument that having being the room from whence all resources are exploited in the country, therefore they should have the political power in determining the usage of these resources. So our point here is
you have about 2 minutes, Monsa.
Okay, so let me round up. Thank you. Our point here has been to point out how the political power becomes the point of balance between two extremities. The first extremity being the population-based ethic of entitlement, which indirectly or directly affect the value of resources. And the second being the resource-based ethic of entitlement, which also directly affect the polity. So our point of interrogation has been to establish that there needs to be a synergy between both angles. And that synergy can only come if the question of political power is actually interrogated, and not just interrogated, if it is diffused between both levels to give each layers equal share to the nation's natural resources. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for that very, very interesting and stimulating discussion. I will now switch into the Q&A session. And I think luckily we have a number of questions for virtually all the presenters. So the first one was for Dr. Rilwan Kolawole. Someone was asking that what else would the media call those herdsmen responsible for the killing and maiming of farmers? And I try to see the positivity in the name calling or profiling, because it really helped to bring to the fore the atrocities committed by herdsmen. And I also posed a question related to that about the issue of subjectivity and objectivity, which has been a major concern. You will recall that just yesterday, the governor of Ondo State, who is the chairman of the Southern Presidential Forum, actually rebuked or knocked the special advisor to the president over his press statement on the illegality of the anti-grazing law, open grazing law promulgated by states in the southern Nigeria. And so the discourse has been, there's a lot of issues, ethnic coloration. How would you, in what way has ethnicity, fueled or flattened, the rate of conflict, among farmers and elders, especially in the Middle Belt region? And also there are also other questions directed to, Dr. Bolanle. I don't know how you. Thank you, Dr. Bolanle. Thank you, Dr. Bolanle. I don't know how your topic reflects the trust of your paper, which I think focuses on resource control and environment. I would like you to. So, and then Professor Nisha, there's a question for Dr. Nisha. Doctor, please, just for clarity, could you please explain 2 or more reasons why some of the Indian...
the questions, Felix, thank you.
Yeah, okay, so, okay, great. You've seen the questions, and So without wasting time, without reading them, I believe you have actually seen it. So let's just interrogate some of these questions in about 2 minutes each, so that we can be on the safe page. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To the question asked by Bobade Ayodeji. It is expected of the media to ensure that at least they report what they observe. They can interview people and report what these people say. But when it comes to the issue of words, the language used in describing people who commit crimes, then journalists have a duty in that regard. Journalists cannot act like many people outside the media. Because whatever they say matters a lot. So I itemized some things that we need to reflect upon here. I said, people who commit crimes are not to be dressed up as good people, not at all. Nobody will accept that, and media will not do that. If they do that, that will be unethical and unprofessional. But anybody who does that does not deserve to be in the media. Then journalism has a duty to uphold high level of neutrality, but this is largely not evident in what they report of conflict or conflict issues generally, not because of the family conflict. Then there are instances where the perpetrators of crimes have not been confirmed, but they have been referred to as Fulani, for instance. That besides, these Fulani herdsmen in quotes are not known with heads, or are not seen with heads, or are not arrested with heads of cow or sheep or any animal, but they are referred to as Fulani herdsmen. So this will not help in a way. And that is why when people are retaliating, they say, oh, they are those who attack our village are Fulani. So when they see Fulani, even without cow, they attack them. So how has that helped us? So journalists need to be very careful here so that they will not, even those who have been arrested, who have been paraded, journalists will still call them suspected criminals, suspected armed robbers. But people outside the media will say they should call them armed robbers. But the media do not have that responsibility of declaring anybody a criminal, except it has been done by the courts. So, but it is a matter of, oh, let us hear what is convenient for us to do. So that's journalism of convenience. Oh, these people, they are herdsmen. They are not just herdsmen. If they are herdsmen, that's a different thing. But they are Fulani herdsmen. They are modest herdsmen. They are what have you herdsmen. Yes, call them herdsmen. There's no problem about that. But the epithets used is against the peace journalism, which the purpose of the story is all about.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, who next? Who is next? What about Dr. Professor Nisha, you want to go?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rasak, John, and Chukwudike for your questions. It's actually, my book is out. It was published with Oxford University Press in 2020 during the peak of the pandemic. So it's out. It's available in Amazon. You can even get it from some of the libraries. So that's there. Thank you for asking. And your question about ethnicity grouping. In fact, as far as I know, there are no ethnicity grouping as such, but there is Indian racism towards Africans. This is something which has been happening over the years, because many people from Nigeria, Congo, many of the war-torn regions in Africa have been coming to, crossing the borders and coming to India in recent years, in huge numbers, I should say. And the recent violent attacks on Africans in India is actually Indian racism towards Africans. And the root cause of that, as I understand, is caste. which is already there in the society and which is already based on notions of skin color, which Indian minds are actually molded into the white skin mania, and everything proximity to the whiteness is what, the notions of caste is based on that. So as Gyanendra Pandey points out, all kinds of racism is upper caste racism. So this racism towards Africans is not just a ethnic racism; it's also rooted in caste. It has more to it, I would say. Yeah, I think that was your question. And was there something else? I think there was one more question, right? Yeah, the question regarding whether East African acrobats have been coming to India. It's this movement that I'm talking about is a contemporary movement. It's not a historical movement that I'm talking about. So this is, and another fact is that if you ask me, like, if acrobats have been coming, Indian acrobats have been traveling to East Africa, I would say no, because circus is a modern form. It came to many of the colonies with white Europeans. Like South Africa has a long history of the circus. Australia has, India has, but at the same time, many of the African countries do not have traditional circuses. So people have not been actually traveling to East Africa as acrobats. And I don't know whether, because Indians have been traveling to various parts of the continent as jugglers, as snake charmers, as, animal trainers. There is a long history of that. I'm not really sure, because there has not been much of a research that was done on the history of Indians as acrobats in East Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, that was a very, very robust answer. Okay, Dr. John Udo, you want to respond?
Yes, there was a question in the chat box for me, of which it was asked if my work will reflect the various crises in the North and how it affects the Igbo people. Yeah, definitely it will, because I said that is the thrust of the chapter 6 of my proposal. Thank you very much.
I also posed a question. I don't know if I didn't see the question about, given the mistrust and animosity that actually built up, prior and after the Nigerian Civil War, as a result of what some people, some Igbo in some literature describe as genocide committed against the Igbo and all of that. How would you describe the pattern, the changing patterns of relations between Igbos and outside, especially the Igbos living in the northern parts of the country, from the 1970s to 2000s?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Actually, this is a proposal, as I said earlier on. So I'm yet to go to the field and invest. Yes.
Okay, noted, yes. Okay,
Thank you so much.
Dr. Wata Onojiro, I think there's a question for you too.
Okay, so I think the question which was asked was about the topic, okay, and yeah, my focus was, so within the paper, I did talk about 2 levels of ethic of entitlement, right? But I dwelt more on the resource-based ethics of entitlement. So that was why I talked so much on resource control. But, for time's sake, I couldn't expound on the population-based ethic of entitlement. So it is actually a two-way thing. There is both the resource-based and the population-based. That's why the topic is called The Politics of Value and Entitlement Ethics in Nigeria, a philosophical inquiry. I don't know if that answers your question, please.
Okay. I was going to ask you a question, but I think we still have a few minutes. In the case of the Niger Delta, how would you assess the nature, the politics of oil, and in relation to, for example, the geo-ethnic nationalities and so in the same context, the ethical dimension of what you have said, we have seen with the establishment of the Niger Delta Commission, I've seen that a lot of resources has actually been injected into the region, but with little to show commensurate proportion due to embezzlement of funds and all manner of irregularities going on within NDDC. So how would you balance that in terms of the entitlement and the ethical issues? So in the past, the Kensaro Wiwa says, the Niger Delta has been underdeveloped, it's been neglected, but in the contemporary times, we've seen a lot of resources coming there. What have they done with all of these resources, and we'll be able to comment on that?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. So within the presentation, I raised the question of what we call the question of responsibility. And I think that your question goes so much into it, which is to say, who do we really hold responsible for these resources that have been pumped in and have not been used in the way they ought to be used? On that, I think that, but the Niger Delta leadership shares a part of blame, the leadership, not the populates, as well as the government, because technically the resources ought to be channeled directly to the individuals and not to some groups. Like, for example, we know that from the since the independence, since 1960, there have been about 3 different bodies created to look into the Niger Delta issue. All of them have failed. The NDDC is the last one, and it is still failing. So it is no longer the case that we need a Niger Delta Commission or a Niger Delta Ministry. It is a case that the individuals themselves, the communities themselves need to be gotten into one after the other, and not just some folks from Abuja creating a ministry and saying, you go do that.
Okay, thank you very much. It's quite a very, very, very stimulating and electrifying session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
quite
sir.
enjoy every bit of the presentation, and I do hope that we'll be able to continue with interaction. The emails of each presenters actually in the email conversation box. So I believe we can probably, if you have further questions for the presenters, and also if you would also want to foster collaborations and partnership with the participants, it's going to be very, very rewarding and productive. Thank you, everybody. Thanks. We were able to save about 6 minutes of our time. I think we've come to the end of the program, except you have anything to say. Anybody, does anyone want to say something before we round up? Dr. Rilwan, you still have some issues to respond to you?
Yes, I think that John Odo was asking about some, but I think I've responded to that. That he was asking for my own personal opinion, but what I was saying, I was talking about the professionalism about journalism, which I wanted to send some something point guideline for ethical journalism. Some of these things are what we serve as our guide in carrying out this study. So you don't escalate conflict. You can escalate conflict in different ways. So one of it is language used in reporting conflicts. So it has not helped anywhere in the world where you use, we know what happened in the Rwandan genocide and other countries in South Africa, Marikana War, and among others. So the language is very important, and media has a way of instilling some kind of ideology in people. So when we start saying something every time from a particular perspective, it becomes enshrined in the minds of the people. So we need to just be careful in the way we issues us.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, we've come to the end of the program, of the session. I look forward to meeting each and every one of you, physically, hopefully, and interacting and partnering with you in any way. Thank you so much. It's been a very good evening. Thanks.
Thank you.
LSA, thank you, Lagos.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, our chair.
All right,
So,
thanks, sir.